You can know everyone in the room and still feel like no one really knows you. You laugh at the right moments. You answer the messages. You show up to family dinners, work meetings, familiar places. From the outside, you seem connected. But inside, there is a quiet distance, as if some part of you is always standing just outside the circle. So you adjust. A little more agreeable here. A little quieter there. You learn which parts of yourself are welcomed and which ones are easier to keep hidden. Over time, this can become so automatic that you stop noticing you're doing it. And that is where the feeling becomes confusing. Because maybe the problem is not that people have rejected you. Maybe they have only met the version of you that learned how to belong without being fully seen. Which raises a deeper question. What actually makes a person feel that they belong? Belonging is easy to misunderstand because from the outside, it looks like inclusion. You have a family, friends who know your name, a workplace where people expect you, maybe even a relationship where someone says they love you. Technically, you belong to all of these places. And yet, something can still feel missing. Because being included is not the same as feeling known. A person can be surrounded by people and still spend most of their energy quietly editing themselves, softening certain opinions, hiding certain emotions, changing their tone, becoming easier to understand, easier to accept. When that happens often enough, connection starts to feel strangely hollow. You are present, but not fully present as yourself. Real belonging seems to require something deeper than access. It requires enough emotional safety to stop performing, stop adjusting, and stop wondering which version of you will be easiest for others to accept. And for some people, that constant self-editing did not begin in adulthood. It began much earlier, when they first learned that some parts of themselves were welcomed and others were not. Long before you knew what belonging meant, you were already learning what it required. Children are remarkably sensitive to emotional feedback. They notice which feelings bring warmth and which ones create tension. They learn which questions are welcomed, which opinions make adults uncomfortable, and which parts of their personality seem to make connection easier. Sometimes the lesson is obvious. More often, it is subtle. You sense the mood before you speak. You become quieter when someone is stressed. More agreeable when disagreement feels risky. More helpful when being useful earns attention. You learn to become the version of yourself that keeps the emotional atmosphere stable. And for a child, that adaptation can feel necessary. Because connection is not optional when you depend on the people around you. So instead of asking, "Who am I?" you may unconsciously begin asking, "Who do I need to be here?" The strategy works. You become good at reading rooms, adjusting quickly, and fitting into different groups. People may even describe you as easy to get along with. But there is a hidden cost. When connection repeatedly comes through adaptation, acceptance can begin to feel conditional. And those early rules do not simply disappear when childhood ends. They can follow you into friendships, relationships, workplaces, and every new room, until fitting in becomes almost automatic. And eventually another question appears. If every environment gets a different version of you, which one is actually yours? The strange part is that adaptation can make you look socially successful. You know how to read the room. You can sense when to speak, when to stay quiet, when to become warmer, funnier, calmer, more serious. You may adjust your opinions slightly, soften your reactions, or reveal only the emotions that feel safe for that particular person. Most of the time, you are not consciously pretending. The adjustment happens before you even notice it. And because you are good at it, relationships can form easily. People may like you, trust you, invite you back. From the outside, there is no obvious reason to feel disconnected. But the connection may still feel incomplete. Because if every relationship is built around a carefully adjusted version of you, being accepted does not always feel like being known. This is where feeling unseen becomes more complicated. It is easy to assume that other people are failing to understand you. But sometimes they are responding to exactly what they have been shown, the version designed to avoid tension, preserve closeness, and remain acceptable. That does not make the connection fake. but it can make it feel strangely distant. And when the same pattern follows you from one relationship to another, eventually you stop asking whether the environment is wrong. You begin wondering whether something about you is. This is where the loneliness becomes harder to explain. Because people may genuinely like you. They may enjoy your company, trust you, depend on you, even love you. And yet, their affection does not fully reach the part of you that feels alone.
Why?
Because somewhere underneath the connection is a quiet uncertainty. Would they feel the same way if I stopped adjusting? If I became less agreeable, less useful, less easy to understand? If I showed the opinions, needs, emotions, or contradictions I usually keep controlled? Rejection is painful, but at least it is clear. Being accepted while feeling unknown creates a different kind of isolation. You can receive warmth and still question whether it belongs to you, or only to the version of yourself that knows how to maintain it. After enough experiences like this, the pattern begins to change meaning. You stop thinking, maybe I just haven't found the right people. Instead, a more personal belief starts forming. Maybe I am the kind of person who never fully belongs. And once that belief becomes part of your identity, every new environment can seem to confirm it. Another room, another group, another version of yourself. But hidden inside that belief is an important clue. Perhaps belonging was never only about finding people who would accept you. Perhaps it was about discovering whether connection could survive after you stopped disappearing inside it. This is the distinction that changes everything. Belonging is not simply being wanted. It is being connected to other people without having to abandon too much of yourself in order to keep that connection. For someone who has spent years adjusting, this can be difficult to recognize. They may assume the problem is that they are bad at connecting, difficult to understand, or somehow different from everyone else. But often, the opposite is true. They may be exceptionally good at connection. They know how to read people, reduce tension, match energy, anticipate reactions, and become whatever helps the relationship continue. The skill is real. The problem is that they may never feel safe enough to stop using it.
So the question begins to change.
Instead of asking, where do I finally fit? A deeper question appears. Where and with whom? Can I stop constantly adjusting myself? That shift matters because it changes the meaning of the entire pattern. The feeling of being an outsider may not be proof that something is missing in you. It may be the emotional consequence of spending too long protecting connection by managing how you are perceived. And that brings us to the final distinction. Fitting into a place and feeling that you belong there can look almost identical from the outside. But internally, they are completely different experiences. And maybe this is why changing your surroundings does not always change the feeling. You can find new friends, enter a new relationship, move to another city, join a different community, even reinvent parts of your identity, and still carry the same quiet distance with you. Because the pattern was never only about where you were. It was about what you learned to do in order to remain connected. For years, you may have searched for the place where everything would finally click. The perfect group, the right person, the environment where you would somehow feel completely at home. But belonging may begin somewhere more subtle. Not when everyone understands you perfectly. Not when you never have to compromise. But when connection no longer requires you to constantly disappear inside it. Maybe feeling like an outsider was never evidence that you were incapable of belonging. Maybe you simply became skilled at being acceptable long before you learned what it felt like to be genuinely known. Because fitting in quietly asks, how should I be here? Belonging feels different. It says, I can still be myself here. And perhaps the most revealing question is not where you feel most accepted. It is where you feel least required to become someone else in order to stay. Think about the people and places where you feel most like yourself.